My name is Mike Finnegan, and with me is Trusha Goffe, one of the other attorneys representing the Crosiers survivors in the Crosier bankruptcy case. And with me to my right is one of the Crosier survivors, Ben Januschka. We're here today because the Archdiocese St. Paul, Minneapolis, late yesterday, chose to file legal documents trying to block the settlement in the Crosier case and block survivors from getting healing and closure in that case. I want to tell you a little bit about the background of the Crosier case. The Crosiers are a small religious order, and they've been operating here in the Archdiocese for years. They filed bankruptcy roughly a year ago, and the survivors, including Ben and a number of others, have worked extremely hard and have spent hundreds of hours working with the Crosiers to reach a settlement in that case. The Crosier settlement was the very first settlement in Minnesota in one of the bankruptcy cases like this, the very first since the Child Victims Act opened in 2013. And the Archdiocese action yesterday puts that at risk. What the Archdiocese did is they filed these legal papers that are up here behind Ben and in my hand right here. Yesterday they filed these papers, and they're asking the bankruptcy court to stop the settlement from going forward, stop the Crosiers from giving money to any of the survivors and helping them heal, and blocking that whole process and trying to delay it. That's what this motion does. And it's outrageous. It's a hardball legal tactic that this Archdiocese is again doing. This is a pattern that the Archdiocese has engaged in throughout the course of the bankruptcy process. And this maneuver yesterday might be the most outrageous that they've pulled so far. There are a couple things in this filing that the Archdiocese did yesterday that make it particularly galling, outrageous, and hypocritical. The first is in their plan of reorganization. We'll pull this up. Roughly a year and a half ago, the Archdiocese filed their own plan of reorganization. In that plan of reorganization that they filed, these same type of claims that they're saying in this objection that they're trying to assert, they did the exact same thing in their plan of reorganization that the Crosiers are trying to do here. They're saying that the Crosiers, they're going to get rid of the Crosiers' contribution and indemnity claims. So the exact thing that they're saying the Crosiers can't do, the Archdiocese tried to do in its plan of reorganization. Extremely hypocritical for them to do that and try and prevent these survivors from getting closure here. In these papers that they filed, one of the most outrageous statements, and this might be one of the most outrageous statements I've ever seen in the 15 years that I've been working with courageous survivors like Ben. But in their papers here, what they say is that the Crosiers' plan has to get denied, is unconfirmable, because the Crosiers' plan provides that the abuse survivors, that's the tort claimants, the abuse survivors receive a larger share of the pot than the unsecured creditors, the indemnity and contribution claims. That's the Archdiocese. So what they're saying in this is that this plan, the Crosiers' plan, isn't fair because the abuse survivors are getting more than the Archdiocese. That's outrageous, it's hurtful, and it's harmful to these survivors. The last reason why this action by the Archdiocese is so outrageous is that this Archdiocese years ago promised all of the survivors in the state that they were going to put survivors first. This is back in 2015 that they said that their goal, their number one goal, was to put survivors first. What this filing here did yesterday is a continuation of them doing the exact opposite. Their actions show that what they're doing is putting the Archdiocese first and not putting the survivors first. In the judge's most recent decisions some months ago, Judge Kressel ordered everybody in the Archdiocese case back to mediation. And in his order, he instructed everybody to put survivors first and make sure that they are the center of this. And this action today that the Archdiocese filed exemplifies that they're not doing that. With me here is Ben Januschka, and Ben is one of the courageous survivors who brought a claim in the Crosier bankruptcy. Ben was molested when he was a kid by one of the Crosier's brothers. Ben is a retired school principal. He's 59 years old, and this is the first time that Ben has spoken publicly. And what I asked Ben to do is, first, is to tell us what the process has been like. Ben is also one of the members of the creditors committee in the Crosier case. And so Ben has been involved in the process since day one in working with us and working with the Crosiers to try and reach this settlement. And Ben's going to tell us about that process.
Thanks, Mike. For the past, just about the past year, I've been part of the creditor committee that has tried to be transparent about how we could work with the Crosiers with this settlement. The process was emotional, it was painful, and up until today I thought it was very productive. It was emotional in that while we were going through this process, we had to also unpack the memories of the abuse that we went through. We had to deal with, again, the shame, the guilt, the loss of trust in priests and institutions. But we felt it was necessary in order for the survivors to move forward, get closure, and continue that healing process, which is so important. The process...
Hold on one second.
Could you not?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
I talk with my hands more than my mouth sometimes, so I will attempt to not do that. But as I was saying, that process, I thought accomplished three things, three very important things. The first one is that it acknowledged that the Crosiers, it had the Crosiers acknowledge the abuse and the abusers, which is extremely important. The second thing is that it allowed the survivors to heal and to get closure to that. And the third thing is that it also allowed the Crosiers to continue with their mission. In a horrible situation like this, it was as close as we could come to a win-win situation with that. But again, it was extremely emotional and extremely painful for everyone, I would say, in the group that was involved with this.
So yesterday, last night after I found out about this, I called Ben and shared with him the news of what the Archdiocese had said and what they had done, and talked to him at length last night. And so, Ben, will you tell us a little bit about how that felt then and how it feels now, what the Archdiocese is trying to do?
The first thing was, I would only describe it as shock. Just could not believe that we were at a point so close to it being resolved, that the Archdiocese would do something like that at such a late date. And it's so frustrating to know that where you feel you are so close to resolution, and then all of a sudden it coming to a screeching halt. And quite frankly, it's very painful to think that we may have to go through this again and start over. It just is, quite frankly, unacceptable for us to do that. And you know, the emotions are still raw even after all those years, and to go through that again is something I don't want the rest of the survivors to do again. We want it resolved, and we want it resolved in a way that we believe from the work that we put in has been fair and equitable, and will help us heal. And we need that. We need that desperately. It's frustrating for us because we believe all it would take would be someone in authority in the Archdiocese to stand up and simply say, enough is enough. We want the burden, you know, we've, as survivors, have shouldered this burden for years and years, and we would like actually the Archdiocese to shoulder their share of the burden as well. And we, like I said before, have reached what we feel is a fair, under the circumstances, equitable agreement with the Crosiers, and to have the Archdiocese bring this up at such a late date is simply unacceptable.
And for those of you here that, let me explain just a little bit about what these far-fetched speculative rights are that the Archdiocese is trying to assert here. They're called contribution and indemnity claims. In the 15 years that I've been working with survivors, these claims have never been made. I've never seen them. In the 35 years that Jeff Anderson has been doing this, these claims have not been made. These are extremely far-fetched, extremely speculative, and all they're doing here is hurting survivors and could hurt survivors by asserting these. What that claim is and what it would require to get there, even in this hypothetical, far-out way, would be for somebody, a survivor in the Archdiocese case, to ask the judge, the bankruptcy judge, can I get outside of the bankruptcy, and can I take my case to trial? So the judge would have to say, yes, you can do that. Then that survivor would have to go outside of the bankruptcy, go through all the discovery, go through all the depositions, all the witness testimony. Years down the road, would have a trial in that case. After that trial, they'd have to win and go through all the appeals that the Archdiocese would surely put them through. Years down the road, we're talking 4 or 5 years down the road. And at that point, the survivor would have to ask the Archdiocese for more than its share of any recovery. They'd have to ask the Archdiocese to pay not only the Archdiocese share, but the Crosier share as well. Never happened in the 15 years I've been here. Hasn't happened in the 35 years that Jeff Anderson's been doing this. And for the Archdiocese to come in here 1 week before this settlement, the first settlement in Minnesota, was supposed to happen is shameful and should not be allowed. And as Mr. Januschka said, what we're asking here is we are asking the Archdiocese, and particularly Archbishop Hebda, to stand up, take control of this, and honor their pledge and their promise to survivors to put them first and make sure that Ben and the other survivors can get the closure that they deserve, that they need, and stop trying to block their settlement here. Any questions?
So is this a case of the Archdiocese is objecting to this because if someone who were one of the 444 people in the bankruptcy, if they were allowed to sue the Archdiocese directly, the Archdiocese could be precluded from recovering any money from the Crosiers, should that person, if that person were allowed to sue the Archdiocese or to prevail in a lawsuit against the Archdiocese.
Even further removed than that. So they have to you have to not only prevail in the lawsuit against the Archdiocese, we have a thing in Minnesota called joint liability. And so they would, the survivor would have to say, not only am I going to take the portion that the trial court, that the jury has awarded against the Archdiocese, I'm going to have you, Archdiocese, pay for the portion that the Crosiers are supposed to pay as well. Hasn't happened. There's 0% chance of it happening, especially in this situation, and it's way, way out there, this type of claim.
So you would see it as a matter of them arguing they wouldn't have protection in a scenario that's not likely.
That's not even not likely. It's I don't think there's any chance of it happening within this setting, and that's why I think this makes this such a hardball legal tactic that they're doing to try and control things here. The other thing that this would do, if the Archdiocese was allowed to do this, what that would mean overall in Minnesota is that none of the cases, none of the bankruptcies, none of the dioceses could resolve their case, and none of the survivors could get closure and healing until every single case in Minnesota was done. So it'd have to all happen at the same time. And all it's going to do is delay healing, delay closure for survivors like Ben and all the other survivors out there. And that's why we're asking Archbishop Hebb to stop this. And as Ben said, enough is enough.
I'm sure this is way too simplistic, but the Archdiocese, can they just add wording in that says nobody will do that? Nobody will go outside the bankruptcy and sue them? And then
They could. There's all kinds of things that they could have done. The first that we heard about this from the Archdiocese was yesterday when they filed this. This plan of reorganization, when the Crosiers filed bankruptcy, we were here and we announced the settlement at that point. Almost a year ago, they knew that this settlement was coming. Months ago, the plan of reorganization in the Crosier case that has the exact same language and exact same provisions as the Archdiocese had was filed. The Archdiocese read that, they knew about it. And it's not until 7 days, 1 week before their settlement is going before the judge to get confirmed that the Archdiocese is in there and trying to block this from happening. So there are all kinds of things that they could do that they haven't done.
So that probably would have been acceptable at some time ago, they just.
They haven't done it. And there are lots of things that they could do to make sure that this doesn't happen.
And for clarity, because I really don't get it, financially, how are the Crosiers and the Archdiocese intertwined? Are they
They're not.
completely separate?
Completely separate. That's why they filed bankruptcy separate, and they're intertwined because they're both co-defendants in some of the lawsuits. And so there were Crosier priests that were working at Archdiocese parishes who abused people in the Archdiocese. So those people that were abused have cases against both the Crosiers and the Archdiocese. Financially, they're completely separate, and it's only in this far-fetched legal thought that they have that there's any connection.
So what's likely to happen? It sounds like there's a date being set for the settlement review or.
So next Thursday, a week from today, there's a hearing in the bankruptcy court in Minneapolis, and we're hopeful that at that point, Judge Kressel will make a ruling on this, and we're hopeful that he denies the Archdiocese's objection and allows this to go forward.
That's a hearing for the Archdiocese bankruptcy or?
No, it's a hearing on the Crosier bankruptcy. So next Thursday, it's called a planned confirmation hearing in the Crosier bankruptcy case. What that means is that's the final hearing, supposed to be the final hearing in that case, in that bankruptcy case, where the survivors, Ben, us as the attorneys for the survivors, and the Crosiers, everybody has filed that plan together saying, we're in agreement. We want you, Judge, to approve this settlement. And that's what's happening next Thursday, and that's what the Archdiocese is trying to get in the way of.
The plan for the Crosiers, how many victims were involved and what's the payout to them?
The Crosiers overall, there's around 67 survivors that have filed claims in the Crosier bankruptcy. There are 43 people that had lawsuits within the Child Victims Act. And so there's two, they break them up into two groups of survivors based on that. But total, there'll be a pot of money that'll be about 23 to 24 million.